would like the first three questions to come from young people, and then we'll open the floor to general questions. So is there anyone young who has something they'd like to ask of me? Don't be shy. No? Maybe? Oh, great. Excellent. I'll give those. Okay, so I have an extra bribe. The first three young people who ask me questions get copies of the Maker's card game, which has just come out. No? Come on, you've had the whole reading to think of a question. It's about an 8-minute reading. If that's not long enough to think of a question, you're not a young person.
He did actually qualify the people who think they're young.
Right, fair enough. All right, so you know what? We'll just take questions from the general public, but you young people, you are welcome to ask. So we'll start with you, sir.
Your last two books, Little Brother and For the Win, have both been about, or been targeted towards younger people, teenagers, and so forth, and pop culture issues. Is it sort of implicit in that there's a really urgent need at this point to educate younger people about sort of digital and civil rights that they're sort of being denied an awareness of by the sort of corporatist and anti-terrorist ideologies that are really current today?
It's a good question. Is the reason to write young adult literature today because young people need urgently to get messages about how our civil liberties are being encroached on and how our freedoms are being taken away in the name of either trade or fighting terrorism or any other kind of abstract noun that abstract nouns tend to be very hard to wage war on. They don't know how to surrender. So I'm not sure if I would say that now is a particularly urgent moment. I think that we've had lots of urgent moments, but I think now is a great time to be writing young adult literature. There's a real resurgence of it, so I think young people are really engaged with literature today. And I also think that the advent of networked culture among young people means that books that speak to them spread really quickly through them. And it's one of the reasons why having free online editions I think really helps, because young people can share books even if they don't physically know each other and kind of entice each other to read the book and maybe go and buy a copy or ask for a copy for Christmas or birthday or what have you. So it's a good time to be doing that. And I think that writing for young people is especially satisfying because one of the reasons that young people read books, I think adults do this too, but not as much, is to really find out about the world, right? Is to contribute points of view to the debate in their head about how the world works, and to find out more. You know, I feel like when I think back on my own adolescence, it felt like I was solving a series of riddles posed by all the oblique things that adults said, where they were kind of talking over my head and trying to fill in the blanks and discover what they meant. I mean, whether that was like just figuring out, like every now and again you'd come across something, you go, oh, that's what that joke in the Warner Brothers cartoons was about. You know, you'd see, you know, someone would tell you about Al Jolson, and all of a sudden all those Daffy Duck moments would make sense, right? You know, more pressingly and poignantly, you know, why is Dad out of work, or what does it mean when they start talking about what the banks have done, and so on. It's great to have those explanations around. The other thing is that I think when I was a young person, facts were really hard to lay hands on. Facts were comparatively expensive. You know, you'd have to like kind of haul your butt to the library and figure out which book had the fact in it. And facts have gotten a lot cheaper. I mean, facts have crashed. Facts, like the same thing happened to the price of a fact that happened to the price of arithmetic. You know, when I was a young person, we worried that kids would lose the ability to do simple sums in their head, which has its own virtue, don't get me wrong. But today, I think in hindsight, the premise that someday we'll lose access to pocket calculators or things that can act like pocket calculators seems kind of silly, right? In the same way, today, now we worry that young people are losing access to huge corpuses of facts in their heads. But the idea that we'll somehow achieve a moment or attain a moment in which it will be hard to find a fact if you know where to look seems pretty unlikely. What's expensive now is knowing which facts to look for. And so that's one of the things that young adult literature can do, is by presenting scenarios that are essentially full of keywords. You know, you don't need to write Steal This Book anymore. You write a whole bunch of keywords that will help a kid figure out what's possible by going and Googling for them. Yep, you know.
You just prompted the thought in my mind, which is that facts have gotten cheaper, yes, but the expense now sometimes is in figuring out which of those many facts, cheap facts, are actually true.
So it's media literacy is more expensive. I wonder if that's true. Lots of people say that, and I think that there's good reason to believe that it's more expensive now to figure out who you should believe than before, except that I think that some of the things that we're surfacing, so it's long been a truism that if you were an expert in something and they wrote a newspaper article about it and you read it, you'd go, my goodness, the New York Times knows so much about everything. How is it possible that they got all these things wrong about this thing that I'm really expert in? And after a few of those, you go, wait a second, they must do this about all subjects, right? And so I think that maybe what's happened now is suddenly through the advent of Wikipedia, which has, for example, which will have big boxes that say everything on this page is up for dispute and lots of people vehemently disagree about it, makes you wonder if there shouldn't be articles on the front page of your local newspaper that have a box under them that say 9 out of 10 reporters in the newsroom thought that this was junk, but the editor ran it anyway, right? And that does happen, speaking as someone who's written for newspapers. So I wonder if what's happened in the last couple of years is not that it's gotten more expensive to figure out who you should trust, but rather we suddenly realized that there was a bunch of expense that we should be incurring. Someone has finally given us the opportunity to devote some energy to figuring out who we should trust. Yeah.
Rapture the Nerds.
Mm-hmm.
There was some talk, I guess, somewhere around 2003, 2004, that the Yugen Strauss may turn that into a full-length novel.
Yeah.
Any idea that's actually...
Yeah, we just sold the book. So me and Charlie Strauss have just sold a book together. We're taking the 2 novellas that we wrote before Appeals Court and Jury Service and writing a third one called Parole Board. And they'll be published between one set of covers by Tor Books under the title Rapture of the Nerds. The book is due a year from now, so June 2011. And I would assume that that means that it would be like a Christmas title for 2011. It should be fun. Charlie and I always have a lot of fun when we write together. Yeah, in the back. So the question's about my short story Clockwork Fagin, which I wrote for Kelly Link and Gavin Grant's forthcoming young adult steampunk anthology, which I podcast, which is where you heard it, right? And so the story, for those of you who haven't read it, it's a young adult story set in a kind of counterfactual steampunk kind of Victorian era, and it's about the kids who've been horribly mangled by the information age, working in the giant information foundries and have been kind of fallen into the machines, who are sent to live in a kind of workhouse for children who've been mangled by information mills. And their cruel master beats them and sends them out to beg, and so they kill him and build a clockwork replica of him that they use to fool the sisters into continuing to supply them with money while they enjoy a kind of unprecedented era of expansion growth, personal growth, and inventiveness. So how do they get the money for all the machines? So they have money from the sisters who supported the orphanage that used to go to pay for the evil master who beat them and sent them out. And then they take all of his fine things and they sell those too. And then once they're up and running, they start that machine shop where they're fixing things for other people, and that's how they sustain themselves. That's a good question. Thanks, Fiona. Yes, you should.